Imagine waking up one morning and every single person on Earth is gone. Not dead, not hiding, just gone. 8 billion human beings. Vanished overnight. Their coffee cups still warm. Their televisions still playing. Their children's toys still scattered across living room floors. Cities fully powered. Streets full of cars. Satellites still orbiting. But not one single heartbeat anywhere on the planet. Now imagine you are an alien commander traveling across the stars for the very first time to welcome humanity into an interstellar civilization. And this is what you find. An empty world, silent oceans, and deep in the ruins of a government building, a message broadcast to every human device on Earth just hours before they disappeared. Protocol Exodus is now active. All citizens report to ascension points. This is not a drill. Where did they go? Why did they go? And what were they so terrified of that 8 billion people agreed to leave behind everything they had ever known? The answer will change the way you think about humanity forever. But before we dive into this story, if you're new here, welcome. This channel is where the greatest science fiction stories come to life through narration and sound. Every single week, we bring you tales of courage, mystery, and the vast unknown. If that sounds like something you want more of, hit that subscribe button right now and make sure you tap the bell icon so you never miss a single story. It takes 2 seconds, and it means the world to this channel. All right, let's begin. Commander Varric Solon stood on the bridge of the Celestial Vow and watched the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. It was beautiful. That was always the first thing you noticed about Earth, its color. That impossible, delicate shade of blue, wrapped in white clouds, glowing against the black of space like a lantern in a cave. Varric had approached 43 developing worlds during his career as a first contact specialist for the Interstellar Assembly. And none of them, not one, had looked quite like this. He had been looking forward to this mission for months. Earth's file had crossed his desk 3 years ago. A young, chaotic, but brilliantly creative species. Barely capable of interplanetary travel. Prone to conflict, yes, but also to music, to art, to philosophy, to a kind of stubborn, irrational hope that the Assembly's analysts found both baffling and deeply admirable. They were ready, or close enough to ready that the Assembly had voted to make contact. Varric had prepared for weeks. He had studied their languages, all 400 of them. He had memorized their cultural rituals, their political structures, their religious sensitivities. He had even, somewhat embarrassingly, practiced smiling in a way that humans might find non-threatening, since the Vanlari species bore a passing resemblance to something Earth's cultures called a lizard person, which he had learned was not considered a compliment. Everything was prepared. Everything was ready, which made what happened next all the more impossible to process. Begin standard approach protocols, Varric ordered, his scaled hands moving across the control interface. His communications officer, a young Thorian named Miraces, looked up from her station with an expression of pure confusion spread across her 6-featured face. "Commander," she said slowly, "I am receiving no response to our hails." Varric frowned. "Try all frequencies." Myra's many fingers danced across her console, cycling through every known band humanity had ever used. Commercial radio, military channels, satellite uplinks, emergency frequencies, internet protocols, television broadcast ranges. She worked through them systematically, methodically, her expression shifting from confusion to something that looked uncomfortably like fear. "Commander," she finally reported, her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "The planet is completely silent. No radio traffic, no digital signals, no military communications, nothing, not even background noise." Varric felt something cold spread through his chest. He had never, in 43 missions across 4 decades of service, approached a living world that made no sound. "Life sign scans," he said sharply, turning to his science officer. Commander Dara Wolf was a methodical Kelrite, a species known for their 6-limb precision and their almost pathological commitment to accuracy. She worked her instruments with quiet focus, her multiple arms moving across different panels simultaneously. Her brow ridges, the Kelrite equivalent of a frown, drew together as she processed her readings. "Commander," she said at last very slowly, "this does not make sense." "Tell me anyway." "The cities are powered. Lights are functioning. Vehicles are present in the streets. Orbital satellites are operational." She paused. "But I am reading 0 human life signatures." The bridge went utterly quiet. "0, Varric repeated. 0, Dar confirmed. Not one single human biosignature anywhere on the planet. In orbit, on their moon installation, anywhere within scanner range. She looked up from her instruments, and her many eyes blinked in sequence, the Kelrite gesture of disbelief. There should be 8 billion humans on that planet, Commander. But there are none. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The soft hum of the ship's systems was the only sound in the universe. Every member of the bridge crew stared at the beautiful, glowing, utterly empty world on the viewing screen. "Take us into low orbit," Varric said at last. His voice was controlled, steady, the voice of a commander. Inside, he felt like the floor had dropped out from under the galaxy. Detailed scans of every major population center. "I want to understand what I am looking at." As the celestial vow descended into Earth's upper atmosphere, the scans began feeding data back to the bridge. And with every new piece of information, the mystery grew deeper rather than shallower. The planet looked lived in. Cities stood intact. Not bombed, not burned, not flooded, simply standing there, patient and empty, like a stage set waiting for actors who would never arrive. Parks showed signs of recent maintenance, as if groundskeeping robots had continued their rounds long after the people who programmed them had gone. Supermarkets still had food on their shelves. Hospitals still had equipment laid out on operating tables. Schools still had unfinished lessons on their smartboards. And everywhere vehicles. Cars parked along streets. Trucks stopped mid-delivery. Aircraft frozen on runways. As if every human being on Earth had, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, simply ceased to exist. "Wolf," Varric said, "expand your scan parameters. I want to know if there is anything unusual about the surface." The science officer worked her instruments for another few minutes. Then she stopped. "Commander," she said, "I am detecting anomalous structures." "Show me." The main viewing screen shifted, pulling up an aerial image of what appeared to be a construction site, but a construction site on a scale that made no sense. It was enormous, miles across, a central platform surrounded by massive support columns, cooling towers, and launch infrastructure. The ground around it was scorched black. Metal structures nearby had partially melted. "A launch facility," Varric said, recognizing the design. "But the scale." "There are more," Wolf said quietly. "Many more. I am counting hundreds across every continent. Possibly thousands. And Commander, they have all been used. Recently, within the last few weeks, based on thermal decay analysis." "Launch sites for what?" Varric asked, though he was already beginning to suspect the answer. "Unknown," Wolf said, "but the scale is consistent with vessels at least 5 kilometers in length." Varric stood very still. 5 kilometers. Humanity's largest spacecraft, according to the most recent assembly survey, conducted just 2 years ago, was a cargo hauler approximately 40 meters long. "Prepare a landing party," Varric said. "Full environmental suits. We are going down." Tokyo was the first city they explored. Varric walked through an apartment on the 42nd floor of a residential tower, his magnetic boots clicking softly against the floor. The window looked out over a city that stretched to every horizon, towers and bridges and parks and highways, all glittering in the afternoon sun, all completely empty. Inside the apartment, a meal sat half-eaten on the kitchen table. Rice, fish, a cup of tea grown cold. A child's drawings covered the refrigerator. A tablet was propped against the counter, still playing an animated show to an audience that no longer existed. Varric stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at that half-eaten meal. Whoever had sat at this table had not expected to leave. The landing teams reported similar findings from 63 locations around the globe. Empty homes still warm. Offices mid-shift. Hospitals mid-surgery. Schools mid-lesson. Everywhere the same story. Humanity had stopped mid-breath and walked away. No bodies. No blood. No signs of disease or violence. No evidence of panic or terror. No messages on walls. No final notes. Just absence. It was in Geneva, in a government complex built beneath the old United Nations headquarters, that they found the answer. Or at least the beginning of one. Mira managed to access the archived emergency broadcast system. She called Varric over to see what she had found. The message had been transmitted to every connected device on Earth, simultaneously, in every human language, approximately 6 hours before the planet went silent. Varric read it 3 times before he fully processed what it said. Protocol Exodus is now active. All citizens report to nearest ascension point immediately. Bring only what you can carry. Family units stay together. Follow all instructions from coordination officers. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The message had repeated on loop for 6 hours. And then it had stopped. And then there had been nothing but silence. Back aboard the Celestial Vow, Varric called an emergency session with the Assembly's senior council via subspace relay. The 23 species of the Interstellar Assembly, the Van Lari, the Thorian, the Kelrite, the Dramis, the Corveth, and 18 others, gathered via holographic link to hear what Varric had found. The council speaker, an elderly Dramis named Vorn Elu, listened to the entire report with his tentacles folded in the Dramis gesture of deep concentration. When Varric finished, Vorn was quiet for a very long time. Could they have destroyed themselves? He asked at last. There is no evidence of that, Varric said firmly. No radiation signatures. No chemical weapons residue. No structural damage consistent with warfare. No mass graves. Nothing. Then where are they? Demanded another council member, a blunt, impatient Corveth named Des Harrell. Dara Wolf stepped forward. She had been running calculations since the moment they left Earth, and the expression on her face suggested she had found something. Honorable members, she said carefully, I believe I have an answer. Or at least part of one. She shared her data to the holographic display. Columns of numbers. Gravitational wave readings. Warp field signatures. I have been analyzing the gravitational distortions throughout this star system, she said, and I have found anomalies. Significant ones. She let that sink in for a moment. We have detected evidence of exactly 500,000 individual warp field signatures, each one powerful enough to move a vessel of Dreadnought class or larger. The conference room erupted. That is impossible, someone shouted. Humanity barely discovered basic warp theory a century ago. The data is clear, Wolf said, her voice steady over the noise. Furthermore, these signatures form a trail, leading away from Earth, toward the galactic rim, into uncharted space. The room fell silent again. Varric's voice, when he spoke, was quiet but cut through the silence like a blade. They did not vanish, he said. They left. All of them. Every single human boarded a ship and departed their home world. But why? Vorn Elu asked, his voice hollow. Varric looked at the frozen image of the empty blue planet on the display screen. That, he said, is what we are going to find out. The Assembly authorized a pursuit fleet immediately. Varric volunteered to lead it without hesitation. 12 ships, 6 species, one trail carved through the fabric of space like a highway pointing toward the unknown. For 3 weeks they followed it, deeper and deeper into regions of space that no Assembly survey had ever mapped. The stars grew sparse. The dark between them deepened. And slowly, piece by piece, the mystery of what humanity had done began to take shape. The first waypoint station appeared in the 4th week. It was built from hollowed-out asteroids connected with structural frameworks, crude by Assembly standards, but functional in a way that spoke of improvised genius rather than inherited knowledge. It was abandoned, but it had been used recently. In the station's control center, Mira recovered fragments of data, supply manifests, docking schedules, maintenance logs. She read them aloud to the senior staff, and with every line, the scale of what humanity had accomplished became more staggering. According to these records, she said quietly, this station processed 847 ships over 9 days. Each ship received fuel, supplies, and what appeared to be technical upgrades. She looked up. The manifest lists provisions for approximately 16,000 humans per ship. That means this single waypoint serviced over 13 million people. Nobody spoke. There is more, Mira added. The fuel compound being dispensed here contains exotic matter components. Commander, humanity should not even know this technology exists, let alone know how to synthesize it. They found 16 more waypoint stations over the following month. Each one told the same story of impossible organization and impossible technology. An entire species, 8 billion people, moved with the precision and coordination of a military operation that had been planned quietly for years. Then came the debris field. It appeared suddenly on the sensors, and when the pursuit fleet slowed to investigate, what they found changed everything. Wreckage. Thousands of destroyed ships. But not human ships. The hull fragments were composed of metals that Wolf's instruments could not identify. The molecular structure was unlike anything in the Assembly's database. The design philosophy was completely alien, nothing even remotely resembling human engineering. These are not from any species we have encountered, Wolf said, scanning one fragment after another. The technology is extraordinary, possibly more advanced than anything the assembly possesses. And then she directed everyone's attention to the weapon scoring marks on a large section of hull that had been torn open by directed energy. This damage, she said carefully, was inflicted by a weapon operating at energy levels I have never seen in practical application. Varric examined the debris for a long time. He noted the thoroughness of the destruction, not damaged, but systematically dismantled with overwhelming firepower. Targeted, deliberate, merciless. These ships attacked someone, he said quietly. And that someone fought back with extreme prejudice. Mira recovered a data core from one of the larger fragments. It took her 3 days to extract anything coherent from a corrupted storage. When she did, she called an immediate all-hands meeting. She activated the playback. The holographic display flickered to life. A command center, alien, functional, staffed by creatures that resembled a cross between insects and machines, precise, coordinated, utterly without warmth. One of them was speaking, and the translation took a moment to render their language into words the crew could understand. 5th Scouting Group reporting. 3rd planet in system designated Sol 437 contains abundant biological resources. Estimated biomass of 8 billion units, varying genetic complexity. Technological development primitive, assembly classification, level 2. Minimal defensive capabilities detected. Recommend immediate inclusion in Harvester Fleet primary target list. The recording continued orbital mechanics, atmospheric data, resource distribution tables. A targeting report. Clinical. Efficient. Describing Earth and its 8 billion inhabitants as a collection of resources. Forwarding all data to Fleet Command via quantum link. Estimated fleet arrival at Sol 437 in 24 standard cycles. Beginning systematic survey of neighboring systems for additional targets. And then the recording ended in static and the screech of tearing metal. Silence. 24 standard cycles, Varric said slowly. This was recorded 26 months ago. 2 months before humanity evacuated Earth, Mira confirmed. The room was very still. They knew, Varric said. The realization settled over him like a physical weight. Somehow, they intercepted these scouts, recovered their data, and they learned that something was coming for them. So they ran, said Commander Jessup Trell of the corvette vessel Resolute Fong. No, Varric said. His voice was certain, absolute. If they wanted to run, they would have scattered, made themselves impossible to find. 100 different systems, 1,000 different directions. But they did not scatter. 500,000 ships, traveling together, in formation, heading toward a single destination. He looked around the room. They are not running. He looked at the frozen image of the alien scout ship on the display, the cold mechanical efficiency of a species that had catalogued Earth as a target. They are going to fight, he said. The pursuit fleet emerged from their final warp jump at the very edge of the galaxy. Out here, stars were rare and far between. The darkness between them was deeper and more absolute than anything Varric had ever experienced. It felt less like space and more like the bottom of an ocean, vast, silent, pressing in from every direction. Commander, Mira reported, her voice hushed. Sensors are detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Multiple contacts. Thousands of them. No, hundreds of thousands. On screen. What appeared on the viewing display made every being on every bridge fall silent. Humanity's fleet. 500,000 ships, arranged in a perfect sphere hundreds of millions of kilometers across, centered on a dying red dwarf star that bathed everything in deep crimson light. Each vessel was exactly 5 kilometers in length. Their weapon arrays bristled at precise angles. Their shields glowed with barely contained energy. And they were positioned with mathematical exactness, every ship supporting every other ship, overlapping fields of fire creating a defensive structure that no force could approach from any direction without facing the combined weapons of hundreds of vessels simultaneously. They built a fortress, Wolf whispered. Not a fleet, a fortress made of ships. Varric studied the formation for a long time. He had spent decades studying military doctrine and fleet tactics. He had never seen anything remotely like this. It was defensive architecture taken to an extreme that bordered on either paranoia or genius. Possibly both. He hailed them. For 3 days, there was no response. The human fleet tracked the assembly ships with their weapons. But they did not fire. They simply watched. And waited. On the 4th day, a response came. The face on the screen was human. A woman, dark skin, short hair, streaked with gray at the temples. Eyes that looked older than her physical age should have allowed. Eyes that had seen things and carried them, quietly, without complaint, for a very long time. She wore a military uniform covered in insignia Varek did not recognize, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who had not slept properly in months. This is Admiral Nora Vaughn, commanding officer of the Exodus Fleet, Human Defense Initiative. You are entering a restricted military zone. For your own safety, I strongly recommend you turn back immediately. Admiral Vaughn, Varek said quickly. I am Commander Varek Solon of the Interstellar Assembly Survey Vessel Celestial Val. We have traveled for weeks to find you. We need to understand what happened. Why did humanity leave Earth? Vaughn's expression remained controlled, but something moved behind her eyes. Grief, or perhaps the memory of it. Commander Solon, she said, I appreciate your concern, but we don't have time for lengthy explanations. What you need to know is that a threat is coming, not just to humanity, but to every living species in this galaxy. And we are here to stop it. The Harvester Fleet, Varek said. The controlled expression cracked. Just slightly. Just for a moment. You know about them, she said. We found the remains of their scouts along your trail. We recovered their data. Varek leaned forward. Admiral, if this threat is real, the Assembly should be coordinating a defense. You do not need to face this alone. Vaughn laughed. It was a short, hard sound, not unkind, but carrying something painful inside it. Commander, she said, let me tell you a story. 2 years ago, Admiral Vaughn said, our deep space monitoring stations detected anomalous signals from beyond the galactic rim. Signals that should not have been there. Our scientists spent weeks trying to decrypt them. She paused. Her eyes went somewhere far away. What we found was a warning beacon, left by a species that no longer exists. A species that had been found by the Harvesters 2 million years ago and consumed entirely, their world stripped, their people taken, their civilization reduced to dust and silence. Vaughn's voice was steady, but Varek could hear the effort behind that steadiness. Before they died, they built a beacon, encoded with everything they knew, historical records, tactical data, technical specifications, the discoveries of 100 other extinct civilizations who had tried and failed to stop the Harvesters before them. It was a gift, from the dead to anyone who might someday be listening. What did the beacon tell you? Wolf asked, leaning forward. It told us that the Harvesters have been cleansing this galaxy of sentient life for millions of years, Vaughn said flatly. Every few thousand years, they sweep through a region of space. They harvest every biological resource, every mineral deposit, everything of value, and then they move on. She paused. They have destroyed thousands of civilizations, possibly tens of thousands. Every species in the galaxy has been living on borrowed time, and most of them don't even know it. The room was absolutely still. Why did you not warn the Assembly? Varek asked. Because the Assembly would have debated, Vaughn said, and her voice, for the first time, carried an edge. You would have formed committees, held hearings, questioned the data, argued about jurisdiction and treaty obligations. And while you talked, the Harvesters would have continued their approach. We calculated very carefully that by the time the Assembly acknowledged the threat and organized a meaningful response, it would be too late. So you acted alone, Varek said quietly. We acted immediately, Vaughn corrected. The beacon contained advanced technology, gifts from dozens of extinct species. Knowledge that those civilizations had purchased with their lives, in the hope that someday, someone would be able to use it. Her expression hardened with something that was not anger exactly, but was close to it. We took that knowledge. We absorbed it as fast as we could, and we built this. She gestured broadly, encompassing the entire 500,000 ship formation surrounding her. Every human government, every corporation, every university, every research lab, every factory, every mine. We redirected everything, the entire productive capacity of an entire civilization, toward a single purpose: survival. We built production facilities on every moon, every asteroid, every piece of rock in our solar system that could support construction. We worked continuously for 2 years. And when the ships were ready, we evacuated everyone. All 8 billion of you, Varek said. All 8 billion. Because we knew Earth would be targeted, the scouts had already logged it as a primary resource site. We wanted to draw the Harvesters away from our home world. We wanted to meet them here, at a location we chose, at a time we chose, on our terms. You used yourselves as bait, Wolf said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We used ourselves as soldiers," Vaughn said firmly. "Every person on every ship knows exactly why we are here. Every person volunteered. Not because they were ordered to, not because they had no choice, because they understood what was at stake." She looked directly into the camera. "Commander Solon, a threat is coming that has been killing civilizations for millions of years. Someone has to stand against it. We decided it would be us." Varric was quiet for a long moment. "When will they arrive?" Vaughn glanced at a display off-screen. 72 hours, she said. "Long-range sensors picked them up 4 days ago." Her voice was measured, but Varric could hear what was underneath it. "They are massive, Commander. Millions of ships, each one the size of a small moon. They are everything the beacon warned us about and worse." "Then we will stand with you," Varric said. Vaughn shook her head. "Your 12 ships would be destroyed in the first minutes of combat," she said, not unkindly. "The best thing you can do is leave now. Return to the assembly. Warn them about what is coming. Warn them that an entire species sacrificed itself to buy the galaxy time to prepare." She paused. "But if you want to help, truly help, then witness what happens here. Record everything. Send it back to the assembly in real time. Make sure that if we fail, at least someone knows we tried. Make sure Earth is remembered not as an empty world, but as a home, the home of people who chose to fight rather than surrender." Varric's throat tightened. "And if you succeed?" he asked. Vaughn's expression softened. "Then we will have given the galaxy a future," she said simply. She reached for her console. "The harvesters are early, Commander. I'm initiating emergency protocols. Your navigation systems are being locked to automatic retreat coordinates. You'll be forced to jump to safety when the battle begins." "You can't do that." "I just did." There was steel in her voice now. Absolute and immovable. "You wanted to help? Then survive. Record everything. Tell our story." She looked directly into the camera one final time. "Remember that humanity did not run, did not hide, did not surrender. We stood, we fought, and we did it for everyone." The channel cut. The harvesters came out of the darkness like a nightmare made physical. Not a fleet, a swarm. They emerged from a void in numbers that broke the imagination, millions upon millions of vessels that blotted out the stars themselves. Each harvester ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human dreadnoughts. They moved with the terrible coordination of a single mind directing every action simultaneously. Silent, relentless, ancient beyond measure. Estimated hostile contacts. Volfa's voice was shaking. "At least 10 million. Possibly 15. Our sensors are being overwhelmed by their formation density." The other 11 assembly ships broke formation and moved forward toward the human sphere. "What are you doing?" Varric demanded over the fleet channel. "Choosing to stay," Commander Jessup replied, his voice calm. "Admiral Vaughn locked your navigation, Commander. She did not lock ours. We are choosing to witness this. To stand with humanity, even if all we can do is watch." One by one, the other commanders echoed Trell's decision. Varric gripped his command chair and said nothing. The human fleet remained perfectly still as the harvester swarm approached. Still and silent, patient as stone. The silence stretched, seconds, minutes, each one a held breath. Then, when the harvesters crossed an invisible threshold in space, Admiral Nora Vaughn's voice rang out across every human channel. "All ships, humanity endures. Open fire." 500,000 warships fired simultaneously. The darkness of space was torn open. Varric had studied fleet engagements for 40 years. He had watched historical recordings of every significant battle in assembly history. Nothing had prepared him for what erupted before his eyes. Human weapons, energy beams, kinetic rounds, exotic matter missiles, and weapons that defied his ability to categorize, lashed out at the harvester swarm with a ferocity that seemed to exceed the laws of physics. The harvesters returned fire. Their weapons cut through space with terrifying precision. But the human sphere held, each ship supporting its neighbors, overlapping shields absorbing and dispersing incoming fire in patterns that spoke of months of rehearsal, of countless simulations, of a defensive architecture that had been designed and refined and perfected with everything humanity had. "They are holding them," Volf whispered, her many eyes wide. "They are actually holding them back." But the harvesters kept coming, pressing forward with mindless, mechanical determination. And slowly, inevitably, human ships began to die. Varric watched, unable to look away, as a human dreadnought took concentrated fire from a dozen harvester vessels simultaneously. Its shields flared bright, then collapsed. Its hull buckled. And then it was gone, a brief, terrible flash of light that faded into debris and silence. First ship lost, Mira reported, tears running down her face. 160 human life signatures gone. Record everything, Varric said, his voice thick. Every death, every sacrifice. Humanity asked us to bear witness. And we will. Hours passed, then a day, then two. The battle raged without pause, without mercy, without rest. And as Varric watched, he began to see what Wolf had spotted early in the engagement, the pattern in humanity's tactics. This was not chaos. This was not desperation. This was strategy. Every human ship was coordinating with every other, concentrating fire not across multiple targets, but on single harvester vessels, pouring everything into one ship at a time until it was not damaged but annihilated, then moving immediately to the next. Brutal, efficient, mathematically precise. The cost was staggering. By the end of the first day, humanity had lost 50,000 ships, 8 million people, but they had destroyed over 200,000 harvester vessels. By the end of the second day, the human fleet had been reduced to 300,000 ships. But the harvester swarm was visibly thinner. Their coordination was beginning to falter as their numbers decreased, the hive mind struggling to maintain cohesion as more and more of its components were destroyed. On the third day, with fewer than 200,000 human ships remaining, Admiral Vaughn's face appeared on every assembly vessel's viewing screen. She looked like a woman who had been fighting for 100 years. Her uniform was torn and stained. Her face was haggard with exhaustion. Her hair had come loose. But her voice, when she spoke, was completely steady. Commander Solon, commanders of the assembly fleet, I want to thank you for staying, for bearing witness to what we have done here. She paused. But now you must go. You must leave, and you must tell the galaxy what happened here. Admiral, you can still win this, Varric protested. Your fleet is holding. Yes, Vaughn said quietly, but not before we are broken as well. She looked at something off-screen. What comes next will be difficult to watch. I won't force you to see it. What do you mean? Varric asked, his voice dropping. I mean that we are going to finish this, Vaughn said simply. All remaining ships have been ordered to execute final protocol. We are going to charge directly into the heart of their swarm, and we are going to keep fighting until either every harvester is destroyed or every one of us is. That's suicide, Trell said sharply. That's victory, Vaughn said, and her voice was gentle. Commander, we came here knowing we would not return home. We came here to buy the galaxy time, to show the harvesters that sentient life can fight back. We have done that. We have hurt them badly. But to truly stop them, to ensure they cannot regenerate and return, we must destroy every single one. Her professional composure slipped, just for a moment. The exhausted, frightened, grieving person underneath showed through. Tell them we tried, she said quietly. Tell them that humanity stood here at the edge of the galaxy and fought with everything we had. Tell them that Earth wasn't just an empty world, it was a cradle. A place that made people who were willing to die for strangers they had never met. Her voice wavered. Please, remember us. Varric lunged for the controls. No. But Vaughn had already activated the override. The Celestial Vows navigation systems came to life on their own. Emergency warp protocols. Automatic retreat. Varric fought the controls with everything he had. They did not respond. The last thing he saw before the warp field swallowed reality was Admiral Vaughn's flagship, the Indomitable Hope, leading the charge as every remaining human ship abandoned the defensive formation and drove forward, in one unified, screaming spear of light, directly into the heart of the harvester swarm. Their weapons blazing, their shields burning, their crews fighting and falling and fighting still. And then the warp field closed, and the darkness of transit swallowed everything. Varric collapsed into his command chair. He stayed there for a long time. The bridge was silent. Mira was crying quietly at her station. Wolf sat motionless, her many arms hanging at her sides, her instruments forgotten. Even the ship's ambient sound seemed muted, as if the celestial vow itself was in mourning. Record it all, Varric said at last, his voice rough. Every moment, every ship, every death. Humanity asked us to remember them. We will tell their story until the stars themselves go cold. 3 months passed. The recordings Varric brought back from the edge of the galaxy were broadcast across every assembly world. Billions of sentient beings watched in silence as humanity fought and died at the rim of known space. Some species wept. Others raged. Some demanded action. All of them were changed. The Assembly convened an emergency session and authorized a memorial fleet, 127 ships representing every member species, to return to the battle site. They carried a monument stone carved from Earth marble, inscribed with the names of every ship that had departed Earth, intended to mark the grave site of an entire civilization. Varric led the fleet back. When they arrived at the coordinates and dropped out of warp into the debris field, the silence on the bridge was absolute. The wreckage stretched for hundreds of millions of kilometers in every direction, millions of destroyed harvester ships and thousands of human vessels, drifting in the eternal stillness, a mechanical reef in the darkness between stars. Varric stared at it. Then Mira screamed, "Commander, I'm detecting human life signs." Varric stood up from his chair, so fast he nearly fell. "That is impossible." Multiple signals, hundreds of thousands of them. Weak, emergency life support levels. But human, alive. All ships, search and rescue operations. Now, every available shuttle. Medical teams on standby. What they found scattered through the debris field left every member of every crew stunned into silence. 1,847 human ships. Damaged almost beyond recognition. Their hulls scarred and scored and torn. Their systems running on minimal power, but intact, and crewed by people who were alive. The indomitable hope was among them. When Varric hailed the flagship, he waited with his hands folded on the console, his eyes closed, not quite daring to hope. And then the channel opened. Admiral Nora Vaughn's face appeared on screen. She looked ancient. Her hair had gone entirely white. Her face was deeply lined with exhaustion. Her eyes were sunken and shadowed. But she was alive. When she saw Varric, she smiled. "Commander Solon," she said. Her voice was hoarse and barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect to see you again." Varric could not speak for a moment. "Admiral Vaughn," he managed. "How?" She laughed, a genuine sound this time, disbelieving and warm. "We got very lucky," she said. "Or the harvesters got very unlucky. I'm not sure which." Her smile faded. "We charged. All of us. Straight into the heart of the swarm, like I told you we would. And we fought." She paused. Her eyes went somewhere Varric could not follow. "We fought for 7 more days after you left," she said quietly. "No rest. No pause. We tore through their formation, destroying everything we could reach. And they fought back." Her voice cracked. "They killed so many of us." Silence. "But in the end," she continued, her voice steadying, "we won. We destroyed every single harvester ship. Every last one." She looked directly at the camera. "The harvesters don't reproduce, Commander. Don't build new ships. Every vessel in that swarm was millions of years old. They were powerful, but finite. And we destroyed them all. The threat that has been killing civilizations for millions of years is over." Varric felt something loosen in his chest. Something that had been clenched tight for 3 months. "The Assembly offers everything," he said. "New worlds, technology, resources. Whatever humanity needs to rebuild, the galaxy will provide." Vaughn shook her head slowly. "We appreciate the offer. Truly. But humanity will rebuild itself," she said. "We'll accept help, but we'll do it our own way. At our own pace. We started this journey together, all 8 billion of us. Those of us who remain will finish it together." The Assembly voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership, and something more. They offered humanity custodianship of galactic defense. The knowledge, the tactics, the willingness to do what was necessary, all of it was needed. Not just for now, but for whatever threats might still be lurking in the dark spaces between stars. Vaughn accepted. "On one condition," she said. "We train your people. We share everything, the ancient beacon's knowledge, our tactics, everything we learned from this battle. Because there might be other threats out there that we haven't found yet. The galaxy needs to know how to fight, Commander. Not just how to talk." In the years that followed, humanity spread across assembly space, not as a conquer remnant, but as teachers, as partners, as the founders of the Galactic Defense Initiative, an organization whose symbol was a sphere of ships arranged against the dark, and whose motto was the last thing Admiral Vaughn had said to Commander Solon before the battle began. "We fought so others would have a tomorrow." 5 years after the battle, a single human ship returned to Earth orbit. The planet had changed in humanity's absence. Nature had quietly reclaimed the cities, forests threading through empty streets, oceans clearing of pollution, animals returning to places they had long since fled. It was not the Earth that humanity had left, but it was beautiful in a different way, patient and waiting and green. On a plain in what had once been the Western Desert, they erected a monument where the first Exodus launch facility had stood. A single stone tall against the sky, carved with the words that Admiral Nora Vaughn had spoken before leading 8 billion people into the darkness. We left so others could live. We fought so others would remember. We died so the galaxy might have a tomorrow. This is what humanity means. This is who we are. And below it, carved by Vaughn's own hand, a single new line added the day she returned to Earth. And we survived. And we will never let this happen again. Vaughn stood before the stone as the sun went down over the empty desert. She thought about 8 billion people who had boarded ships on a Tuesday morning in the middle of their ordinary lives and chosen to carry the fate of the galaxy on their shoulders. She thought about the millions who had died in the dark at the edge of everything. She thought about the ones who had survived, about the children being born now, in ships and on colony worlds, who would grow up knowing what their parents had done. She thought about Earth, patient, beautiful, waiting. And she thought about the future. She thought about it for a long time. Then she turned and walked back toward the ship. There was still work to do.